Welcome to the Everlasting Podcast, the ultimate destination for CEOs, founders, and changemakers like you, who are not only satisfied with success, but striving to create everlasting fulfillment. I'm your host, Nico van der Venne, entrepreneur and fervent believer in the power of everlasting fulfillment. Do you find yourself pondering what's beyond success? Have you ever thought about everlasting fulfillment? If so, you're in the right place. Here, we don't just talk about business, we talk about the journey from success to fulfillment. We'll engage in insightful conversations with distinguished CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, and experts in various fields each week. We'll uncover the secrets to creating a sustainable business, transcending societal norms, and building everlasting fulfillment. So if you're ready to go beyond profits and accolades, to create everlasting fulfillment in life and business, stick around, because the Everlasting Podcast is the strategic insight you've been waiting for. Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to our newest podcast episode. And I've got somebody really interesting on the podcast today. And I'm going to quote his beautiful mission statement because I find it so much aligning with my own one. But Ben is on a mission to actually move the needle on 1 million lives, one conversation at a time. And in all honesty, I haven't even started to talk to him, but Ben, you've already moved my needle several times by your own podcast. So I think this is going to be another one where the needle is certainly going to be moving. How are you doing? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm blessed to be here. I'm doing fantastic. I know you put a lot of time, effort, energy into curating a beautiful podcast. So I'm honored to be a part of it. The
Thank you very
key
much.
word in that statement is actually the word actually, is the key word. Because I have
Okay.
a marketing background. I run a marketing company. I host a podcast, Real Business Connections.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who sees marketers, and I get it. I was young. I was dumb. Some things are more persuasive than I'd like them to be, but they're persuasive. But I see people, posting their car, and sometimes it's not their
Mm-hmm.
car. It's just a random stranger's car. Or they rented it. Or I see someone, bragging about how hot their girlfriend is, or posting a shirtless photo. And things like that are sometimes compelling, and they get a like, and you get a lot of vanity likes and metrics. But does
Mm-hmm.
it actually move the needle? Does it
That's a very
actually
good.
help
Yeah.
make a change? And a million lives, honestly, I think that's kind of conservative, but it's because I want the needle to actually move. I can get a million listens, I can get a million views, I can get
Mm-hmm.
a million likes, especially
Mm-hmm.
quantitatively with all the posts you put out. But actually moving the needle, and the beauty with a needle move is that completely changes the course of the direction.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
might not seem like it at the time. I've had a lot of these as a podcast listener. You get these aha moments. You
Yeah.
don't realize it at the time, but that tiny little shift in 10 years, your destination is going to be completely different. So,
Absolutely.
the last part in this, I don't know, actually really think about it all that much. I just sort of wrote that one day, but breaking it down for y'all, the
Yeah.
last part is one conversation at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is just showing up, adding as much value, being as present as possible in every conversation, because it could be the grocery clerk, it could be the
Yeah.
podcast listener, it could be a
Mm-hmm.
family member. You don't know when those aha moments will occur. You don't know who needs to hear what. Yeah, I can do a market analysis and know my audience and create a profile of who I'd like to speak to, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't know exactly who tuned in, what just happened, and
Right.
what's going to spark for them. So, the best you and I can do is show up to the best of our ability, try to create those sparks, try
Mm-hmm.
to move those needles, and the people that need it at the right time in the right place, those are the ones that I'm speaking to. And
Absolutely.
I'm not for everyone. Some people turn me off, and that's okay as well.
That's all fine. I just keep on listening because I love your podcast. I listen
Thank
to a
you.
couple of them. Of course, indeed, some guests are more like than others. But yeah, it's just amazing on the the small moments, like you say, like the aha moments. And when I wrote when I read your statement right there, that mission statement, I have another one, which is creating the best of humanity one person at a time.
Yeah.
So when it hits like the at a time at the end was like, wow, that's like syncing up with the same story. It's just a little bit of a different approach. One person at a time could be a listener, like you say. It's just amazing what you can do with a simple podcast. Actually, this afternoon, I was talking to a couple of people. I'm just in this mastermind story with like I've maybe 8 people or something, and one of the people there, one of the ladies there, asked the question. So how many listeners do you need on a podcast to make it interesting? And the coach and I, like, almost at the same time, like, one.
Yeah.
You just need one person that listens to your podcast and is inspired in some way, and it's fun, isn't it? That's the fun part for me.
I love that answer. Even in the question, to make it interesting, like it was interesting before I even clicked publish. Like the beauty in podcasting is we get to share time and insights with people that honestly are really busy and in
Hmm.
some cases charge a lot of money for their time.
Oh
So
yeah.
just the fact that I got to do the interview as a host and as a guest, I love meeting my host, but as a host, just the fact that I got to interview a brilliant person makes
Hmm.
it worthwhile in itself. And then the amplification of that story to a larger audience is really just icing on the cake. But even if it's just me, you, and our grandparents listening, I'm okay with that as well.
Might be very interesting conversations ending up if we knew it was our grandparents listening.
I would definitely be zipping my lip a little more than I usually do.
Don't tell them that story or that story. Indeed, indeed.
All my stories are missing now.
But your own story is quite an interesting one. You're a I saw it's not intended to be a staple on anybody, but you're like kind of a COVID entrepreneur, aren't you? You just sort of skyrocketed during the pandemic. Can you tell us about your story? I find it amazing.
Yeah, you could call me an accidental entrepreneur because I wasn't studying the greats at a young age. I didn't really come from a super entrepreneurial family. There was no Jeff Bezos or Oprah on my wall.
Oh, okay.
If anything, it was Michael Jordan and Vince Carter on my wall because I wanted to be a basketball player, and I literally had a jersey for every single day of the week.
Okay.
Um, I ended up being the shortest boy in my class.
Ouch.
So what happens? You kind of get pushed around, you get bullied, you get picked on, and honestly, my basketball dreams never came to fruition, and I transitioned from basketball to music. And
Okay.
this was something that I firmly believe that even when we're struggling or lost, all those experiences are happening for us because they're
Mhm.
preparing us for the person we get to become in the
It's
future.
true.
It's all
Mhm.
part of our story. So I quit basketball, was all angry, and my friend Brendan Gansmer gave me a mixtape with like 12 different bands on it. And I'm like, who are these bands? And like I sparked and I became obsessed with music. And I took all that energy from basketball, put it into music around high school time. And
Mhm.
that's where the first time I found my tribe. And it was the first time that really like I found my place in this world because I
Mhm.
was handing out flyers. I was setting up at the time MySpace pages, then it was Facebook pages and Facebook
Okay.
events.
Mhm.
I was promoting bands. I was wearing merchandise. I was a big local music advocate well before I knew what marketing was.
You
And
were a
then
local influencer.
long story, I wasn't an influencer per se, but my
Okay.
goal is always to be a bridge. Get
Yeah.
the good stuff from the people who have it to the people who need it. So
Mhm.
there was a great band. I served as a bridge to get it to more people. But I
Yeah.
was more the Wozniak to the Jobs. I wasn't the
Okay.
influencer, but I was the one amplifying the band,
Uh-huh.
quite
Uh-huh.
literally in the music industry. But I'm rambling. The
No,
whole
it's fine.
point is I didn't know I was gonna be a marketer. and I had started a business, a music podcast in 2016 because I was passionate about music and podcasting. And then when 2020 hit, I was a sales executive for a marketing firm. A lot happened to bring me to that place, but I
Hmm.
got let go during the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And music, love of audio editing, love of podcasting, love
Hmm.
of learning, love of amplifying good things. I just took all these skills that I kind of had. I don't know. I was just doing it for fun and
Hmm.
started a music, well, not a music, I had a music end of my business, but I started a marketing firm. I started a business podcast. I kind of put the bow on the music podcast, gave it to a new host, started a business show. Music Ben was out late, tired, and non essential, quite literally, during the pandemic. Business Ben is an entrepreneur. So I kind of just redefined myself overnight, put all those interests and skills into let's build a business podcast and learn from thought leaders.
Hmm.
And that's what created the foundation of my marketing firm. And I somehow replaced my income in a year. I still don't know how I did it, but truly how I did it was just meeting good people. Even
Hmm.
when there was just two listeners, it was
Yeah.
bringing value, building relationships,
Hmm.
like-minded people, and that led to insight, referrals, growth opportunities, a personal brand. But it started small, and honestly, my friend, it's still pretty small. So we'll see what we accomplish in the future.
But to my mind, you're not doing it small. And to my mind, you're rocking it very heavily. I think if you would try the same thing here, it wouldn't launch that way. It would be very difficult to get it off the ground. It's just a different culture, different way of
Mhm.
looking at things. Podcasting is fairly new where I live. I live in almost in the center of Europe, Belgium. I don't call it the best country, but I call it a good country. But it's amazing how it could pop out of nowhere, what you're actually starting to do at some point in your life. It's like you say, I could actually imagine you walking around with these basketball shirts, and then giving out the flyers. It's just maybe it's not
Yeah.
at the same time, but I could see that image, and then at some point, I see a picture right now. We're not showing video, but I see yourself in the back with your nice suit on, and that's a completely different person than what you would think where you come from.
Yeah.
And that's just it also shows that how much is possible in one's life. At one point you might be cleaning floors, and then if you put in the effort and you start meeting people and showing yourself out there and standing up for what you believe in, at some point you're actually creating something very unique, which attracts the right people. Of course, you always have to be selective with who you talk and where you go. At some point you're going to have to be selective, but that's what I find amazing in our world, in this human existence world, where we have so much opportunity, and some of us just don't see it. And
Yeah.
then you see these guys coming out of the ground like a mushroom popping open and showing themselves and becoming an amazingly popular and well known and so on. And I saw your podcast at some point, and I think we met while you commented on one of my posts on LinkedIn. I can't remember exactly. It was something like that. But then
Hmm.
suddenly you see somebody appear, and I'm like, okay, I need to. Who's this guy? Who's this guy? I went around, started looking at your podcast, started listening. It's like, and
Yeah.
and then I see all this stuff that you do with so many connections, and these people that you meet in your podcast is like people that I would like have would find wonderful to have conversations with, because there's so much body in their existence, and it just evolves, doesn't it? At some point, you're in the past, you're not sitting in your chair and thinking, I'm going to be a podcaster talking to that guy, that guy, and that guy. It
Uh,
doesn't start that way, does it?
Not at all. A good friend of mine. First off, I want to highlight all I did is comment on one of your posts, and then it started a friendship. So
Yeah.
if you see a post, if you listen to a podcast, if you watch a video, showing love to the creator, those tiny little deposits of positivity into this world can make a
Mm,
world of a difference once they compound. So it blows my mind that, like, I comment on a lot of people's posts,
mhm.
usually doesn't go anywhere, doesn't matter. Sometimes it becomes friendship, and that's really what's
Mm,
important to me. Um,
sure.
a good friend of mine, Brian Bogart, says it all the time. There is no end destination, only constant evolution of self. So people see Ben or Nico or anybody at this end destination. First off, it didn't happen overnight. It's
Mhm,
not the end destination, and they're actually going to get better. So watch them in 5 years. They're going to be even higher and more successful. Um, but also, people are drastically overestimating. I, I literally, before we jumped on this call, I was watching a YouTube video and an ad popped up and it said, learn how to make $10,000 a month, 2 hours a week. And all you need to do is know how to copy paste a message.
mhm,
And I turned off the ad because I was watching a video. But if I watched it, I'm sure it would come through this big get rich quick shabam.
mhm,
And at the end of the day, the best way to get rich, to get healthy, to make a change, the best way is quick. I'm not going to argue that quick isn't a good thing, it's more efficient. That
mhm,
being
mhm,
said, people drastically overestimate what they can do in a day, a week, a
mhm.
month, a year. They think they can spend 2 hours a week copy pasting and become a millionaire. Maybe you can, and I probably should have clicked that ad, but you usually can't do that.
No.
But they underestimate what they're going to accomplish and where they'll be in 3, 5, 10 years. They might
Mhm,
not even recognize the man, woman, or child they become 3 years down the road. So they think that they can have a quick fix. You overestimate what's going to happen in the next 6 months. But
mhm,
my God, you personally usually miss the target on where you'll be in 5 years.
mhm,
You'll probably and most of your listeners are already successful,
mhm,
and there's a high probability that they're at a plateau.
mhm,
But if they just a 1 degree change, a 15 minutes a day change, a one insight, a one tool change, in
mhm,
5 years, they might not even recognize who they are and where their business was because it
sure.
could 3x, 5x, 10x. And it's really just making the decision to go out and do it. And then everybody's going to say that they got lucky. Everybody's going
Yeah,
to
of course.
say they were an overnight success. But no one saw the 30 years leading up to massive changes and massive moments.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I feel that. I remember it's a book that I read pretty recently called The Slight Edge. Maybe you
Mm,
know it. It's
no.
an amazing story. It's one of those books where they visualize a lot of stuff, and it's about the domino effect, but not the domino effect of just, the same size. It's the one where the exponentially resize the domino each time. So by toppling over the first one, the second one is like, I think it's about 95% higher than the original one, and then the next one is the same thing. So it's kind
Wow.
of compound effect story where you end up at the I think it was the 53rd domino. It would be the size from the Earth to the Moon that you would be able to topple by, and it was just a story where, of course, this goes in two senses. If you drink a glass of alcohol each day, one won't be a problem, but if you would do it each day, it would deteriorate at some point and you would go down the spiral of maybe not alcoholism or anything like that, but you
Yeah.
might go down and not be productive, period. Maybe that would be the end. On the other side, if you go and take a walk every day, maybe just a 5-minute walk, you go up an upward spiral where you get healthier, your condition changes, etc., etc. So this is like, that book was full of all these wonderful tips and tricks on how you could change your life just by doing little things. And that's one of the things that I've noticed that you also mentioned in previous conversations I listened, was like the morning routine. The morning routine is something that I find so much more worthy of discussing at certain points when it comes down to why do people become successful. I think it basically really comes down to their bespoke morning routine? Because for everybody it's different and it's unique. I don't know, Ben, what's your story in the morning routine story? Because I find that it's a good one to talk about, I think.
Yeah. First and foremost, I've done a variation of the miracle morning for almost 10 years. I'm
Okay.
curious, do you know the
I
miracle
have heard
morning?
about it. I haven't heard the details, but I know it's is it that the 5 in the morning, getting up and then doing exercises, and that's is it that one?
Yeah, so Hal Elrod, and just look up Miracle Morning. They've sold millions of copies, but silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and
Hmm.
scribing is the
Hmm.
Miracle Morning. So I'd recommend just go read that book. Don't even listen to Ben, because I create a variation. I've actually never talked about this
Oh,
ever
okay.
out loud before. I scribbled it down this morning, so this might be sloppy, but same concept as the miracle morning. So people can write this down.
Hmm.
Being, biz, body, brain, bond. Being, biz, body, brain, bond. So let's simplify it.
Okay.
Being, having a
Mm,
moment of silence where you breathe, whether it's breath work, meditation, a moment
mhm,
to, even it could just be a single breath hold. Breathe as heavy as you can, hold it for as long as you can, let it out for as long as you can, real
mhm.
quick. Something that helps your being. Maybe it's walking out into nature and getting some vitamin C, getting some sunlight. But every morning, it could be 30 seconds. Do something that helps your being. Let's do biz at the end, because people want a biz, but they need all the other things. So being, biz,
Yeah.
body, brain, bond. So there's being, then there's body. Get
Mhm.
the blood flowing. There's two kind of things in body. One, you got to do what you didn't do. This is a simple way to put it. Do what you didn't do when you were sleeping. So what
Mm.
didn't you do when you were sleeping?
Yeah, you
You,
didn't move.
you didn't move, and you didn't drink water.
Oh, yeah.
So drink water and move your body. Now, depends on how much of a badass mother you are, but hit the gym, but just
Mhm,
get the blood flowing. It could be a
mm,
few push-ups, it could be a few jumping jacks, it could be stretching, yoga, but nurture your body. So we've got being, your body, your brain. Do
mhm,
something that makes you smarter. Let's simplify it. Read a
mhm.
nonfiction, read a biography, watch a motivational YouTube video. Do something that makes you better, not bitter. Don't pick up your phone and start scrolling and reading the news. That's going to make
Yeah.
you bitter. But if you're reading a book or a nonfiction, or honestly, I love nonfiction. It can be creative. It can be completely fiction. But if it
True.
stimulates your brain, if it gets you excited and in a creative state, that's so, so important. And another thing that I like to do for the brain is just journaling.
Mm,
What are the three things I'm grateful for? What are the three objectives for the day? Did I accomplish my three from yesterday? And sometimes just word vomiting things that are on my mind. So we've got your
mm,
being, your body, your brain, then your bond. And the reason I like bond and then biz in this order we're going here
uh-huh.
is your bond is just taking more equals more. It actually does compound, more equals more, but just
Indeed.
taking 45 seconds to send one message to someone you haven't spoken to in at minimum 1 month.
Okay.
Easy way to
That's
do it. Where's my phone? I hit it so I wouldn't be on it. You just scroll to the bottom of your texts. You scroll to the bottom of your direct messages. You scroll to the bottom of your emails. You're going to
Mhm.
see people you met at a conference. You're going to see ex coworkers. You're going to see a misconnection or a missed client. You see what they're up to. If it's on social media, it's so easy because they might have just posted. See what
Yeah.
they're up to, and then you send them a direct message. Hey, it's been so long. I just realized you hit your 50th podcast episode, and I never wished you a congratulations. Hope you're doing well. You send one of those messages every single day. What's that going to do for your bonds? What's that
Yes.
going to do for your relationships? And that's just one a day, 365 a year, over 3,500 every 10 years. What if I did 10 of those a day? Just
Wow.
imagine what bonds we would create. And business, that's specific to your business. But if you did all those other things, do you
Mhm.
think your business is going to go well? If you're taking that bond category and you're doing that for prospecting, If you're maybe incorporating golf as your body, so you go out with a client meeting and that's how
Mhm.
you get your exercise. If you're doing all those things, do you think your business is going to be more successful? And in the fraction of the scenario where your business doesn't grow rapidly,
Mhm.
your mental and physical health is going to be better. So
That's
the
true.
time might not have came yet. It might be real estate and we're in a down market. I know in America the real estate market's trash. But if
Mhm.
you're doing all these things, the time will come where you're called and you're going to crush it in business. But you can't crush it on business if you don't have all those other buckets. So again, being body, brain, bond, business. And I didn't create this and then go do it. I just
Mhm.
did it. And now I'm codifying what is Ben doing right. And
Cool.
really, it's that I do those B's every single day.
That's like a whole hive you're running right there.
I guess so.
It is amazing. It's so there's a lot in there. There's a lot, it's very simple basically. It's
Yeah.
very simple, but there's a lot in there. Especially I found the idea of indeed contacting somebody that you haven't talked. It's indeed so simple. Just scroll down and just it ends there. Quickly check what they're doing, and in the end, it's not really always about prospecting, isn't it? I've always learned. I used to be. You probably know BNI as well,
Mhm.
Business Network International. I used to be a member, and I read all the books because they're very good networking books. And he always said it's the network behind the network. It's not everybody that you know directly. That's people that you want to talk to. It's the network behind the network. And how do you make a network? That's by talking the first person that you meet or the first person that you already know, and then tell them, "Hi, how are you doing?" And the conversation goes from there to whatever you want, because at some point they're going to ask you, how are you doing? And that's the point where you're saying, I'm actually starting with something new, and I'm kind of looking for a lot of people in that direction. You actually basically say, this is my target audience, this is what I do, and this is what my services are. But
Mhm.
in a conversation, and it pops up, and I've had this several times where people say, hey, I know somebody who can use your services because they have this and this and this. And it's not that you're doing forced sales. On the contrary, you're actually telling them something interesting about yourself, but you're actually involving them first in their story. When I ask somebody, how are you doing, to me it's not a simple question to hear the answer, oh, I'm fine. I want to hear what you're telling me. And that's basically part of my business. I am a confidant to CEOs and founders. So I listen to a lot of people with a lot of things that they cannot tell to anybody else because they feel isolated. They're the main man or the main woman, and nobody else should know what's going on in their head because they're thinking of strategies. But on the other side, they're scared because they have to go and talk for the board of directors, blah, blah,
Mm.
blah. But if you listen to anybody, it's amazing what you get out of that. And that's where I really love what you're saying as the first thing is silence. Because we are so uneasy. And I'm talking mainstream here. There's a lot of people who are really easy with it, but there's so many people who are uneasy with silence. Just taking the moment to be silent. Did you feel that?
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just pausing a second, listening in what's happening. You see, the effect of silence is so amazing. And that's if you do that in the morning, your brain isn't active yet,
Yeah.
but you get out of I can just imagine you're lying down, you're getting up, and not even, maybe if you lie down, you do it right there, but get up, silence. What you're saying, Ben, is just, it's so powerful, because in that silence you start off your day in a rest mode, which means that anything that comes to you cannot hurt you because you are at rest. And then you move on to your next ones. It's just, I love that. I really love that. I do kind of the same thing every morning. Sorry, I almost spit over my keyboard here.
I love it.
Too much silence kind of, brings up stuff. We're going somewhere I don't want to go. Anyway, but I do the same each morning, where I get up just a moment of silence, and I don't do the exercise first. I take my notebook and I write down three thank yous. Just really thank you, thank you, thank you, and then I write behind them
Mm.
one point, maybe a person or something that happened the day before or something that is happening at that time. It's just at random. And I have this red book lying on my bedstand, and that's what I do right after that. And then I get up and I have this exercise that I had taught to me by a Tai Chi teacher. And I am not a sporting guy in any sense of the word. You thought about basketball. I did not think about any kind of sport.
Yeah,
I'm a gamer. I'm
love
a
it.
sci-fi fan. I'm a Lego builder. Everything that has a chair on it and a table, I'm fine there. Might go into chess at some point, but that's not really sporting.
It
But then,
counts.
sorry.
It counts.
Yeah. Okay, it does count. Okay, then I'm going into chess. And this is exercises that were actually basically the warm up, and nothing more than that. And the whole Tai Chi story behind that, I actually never really learned it because we only did a couple of sessions. It's my fault. It's not the guy's fault. It was amazing. I'm just not the kind of guy that keeps on going with sports. And I still use those, just, opening up the arms and stuff like that. And that keeps my motor, that's my motor running. And of course, indeed, the glass of water comes straight after that, stuff like that. So I kind of make the same routine go on, but now I'm going to put in something new that you just told us about, which is the contact point. That's amazing. That's just a slight little edge. There we go again with a new one. That's amazing morning routine. So you just wrote that down this morning, you're saying?
The bees, yeah. I was
Oh,
like,
the bees.
how can I take here's the thing. Nothing I said is rocket science. Nothing I
Okay.
said is something that other people haven't said elsewhere. I
Mm-hmm.
just thought if I were to create my own acronym or my own something, I could at least kind of pretend like I came up with it. So I want to kind of make it my own, but it truly, I know personally as someone who's very self-driven, like I do stuff because I do it for myself, not for
Mm-hmm.
validation. I'm wired weirdly. I forget about the bond aspect.
Okay.
I struggle with it.
Hmm.
I would have more friends if I reached out to more people, but I'll go days or weeks where I don't need to talk to anybody. So, mindfully integrating that aspect. And here's the thing, it's not like you just send a message and then you call it a day. It
Mm-hmm.
actually gets a calendar pretty busy because people want to meet for coffee. They want to jump on a phone call. They want to, and what a great problem to have. Maybe you throw a happy hour, maybe you throw an event and you bring everybody together. But none of that's possible if you're not reaching out to your misconnections, to your loose ties. And you said it with the BNI examples, they might know someone you need to know and you just don't realize that because you never reached out to them.
Mm-hmm.
You never
Mm-hmm.
said hello.
Indeed. You were saying event. Now I got something that I've seen pass by on your end. Didn't
Mhm.
somebody challenge you to set up a certain event, or you had to do something instead? I saw something pass by. That already happened, didn't it?
It happened. Do you know the concept of adding stakes to make things really painful if you don't actually accomplish it?
Oh, no, I don't know about that
Really
one.
simple. So first off, when people pay, they pay attention. You want someone to have stakes in a matter. You want them to buy in.
Oh yeah.
So a really simple concept is, let's say you do want to get into shape. You say, I need to go to the gym 5 days a week. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is you find an accountability partner. And if you're integrous, you'll actually do this. But if I don't make it to 5 this week, I have to Venmo you $100.
Okay.
I have to
Okay.
write a check for $100 or something that hurts. So you
Yeah.
miss it one week and you're like, wow, that kind of hurt. And then you
Yeah.
miss it 3 or 4 weeks and you're like, at this rate, I might as well just get in shape. I'm going to get broke.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny. It's kind of gamifies it, but it
Sure.
holds you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So I read a book, The 2 Hour Cocktail Party. Nick Gray, great guy, had him on the podcast. He went through exactly how to host a party. I didn't even have to reread the book because he does such a good job. So crystal clear. I told him I'd host a party. I never did.
Okay, that's where he caught you.
He didn't even catch me. Like, it at the end of the day, he's off on his own. He doesn't care if I host. He wants me to, but what's in it
Mhm.
for him? He could care less if I host
Yeah,
it.
that's
Like, he wants me to, but his life moved on. And
mhm,
like myself and most people finish there. They never do it, and it never happens.
mhm.
But I've brought him up multiple times in conversation. I've even told people you should host a party, even though I didn't do it myself. I'm an idiot. And then Michael Bungay Stanier, he wrote The Coaching Habit, sold over a
Yeah.
million copies. Brilliant guy. He was
Mhm.
on the show. I don't know how it came up, but Nick Ray came up and he called me out on my podcast. And he's like, "You haven't hosted a party? You need to host a party. And what you need
Okay.
to do is you need to make it hurt. So if you don't host it, there needs to be like, you need to donate to a bad place, or you need to make, there needs to be incentive for you to host it so I can hold you accountable. So by the end of February, you need to do X, Y, and Z. So then
Mhm, mhm,
offline, we determined, very passionately not wanting to donate to this cause, we
mhm.
determined offline, if I didn't host a party by the end of February, I have to donate $100 to the KKK.
Wow, that's an incentive there.
And the last
Okay.
piece, and then I'll shut up, is I have this weird inflammation that pops up once in a while. It's called gout. Basically,
Yeah.
my foot will feel like I had a hammer just like
Mhm,
smashed on it out of the
mhm.
blue, unexpected. Happened overnight, 36 hours before my party, and I could barely
Oh,
walk.
oh my
But
God.
the question is, do you host the party anyways in crippling pain, or do
Mhm.
you donate to the KKK? Which one do you think I did?
Oh, you hosted the party, I'm sure of that.
And you know what happened at the party and afterwards?
Mhm.
Everyone asked, "When's the next one?"
Oh, well, that's nice. Then
And
that's
that's the moral of the story. Like,
yeah.
I had to go through trials and I made it way more difficult than it had to be, and everybody was happy I did it and were wondering, 1, why didn't you do it sooner? And 2, when are you doing it again? So, I
Cool.
guess the moral of the story is, what haven't you done?
Mhm,
And why are you waiting? Because people are waiting for you to do it, and then as soon as you do it, they're gonna ask you for more. I think
mhm.
we all have that in our lives.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine a couple of things. Yeah, yeah. That's a
You
good
asked.
one.
It's a
Yeah.
long story. Again, I've never
What?
told that story before. It just happened this month.
Yeah, but I read it. It was like, "Oh, I'm meeting him soon." Yeah, no, this is going in there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've
That's a
still
good
never
one.
donated a penny to the KKK. If anything,
Good,
I
good, good.
would gladly hurt
I am
those
agreeing.
people. But anyways,
Well, everybody has their point of view, doesn't they? So yeah, and they make it as
eh,
being valid for themselves. So yeah, I had this whole conversation because I'd love to go in there. Not especially on the. I'm not gonna promote the KKK. We'll just park that in a
I
different
hope
zone.
not.
It's just like nah, nah. We have different kind of stories there. No, thank you. But I do see a story in perspectives there. They have a certain perspective and they think it's true. And I've had this conversation with several people, and I just wanted to ask you what your view is on it. No pun intended, but kind of links to each other. Is that there are people in this world who have perspectives that are damaging to others, and for themselves, they see it as a something normal. They are executing something that is in their world normal. And what I've learned from I had this spiritual mentor about 5 or 6 years ago, and he told me that do not judge, but step into shoes of and learn and judge then. And it was an eye opener. That was really an eye opener for me, because I was one of those guys like, well, him, yeah, blah 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 blah. He's doing this, he's wearing that. And I was really on the facade story and interpreting a lot and filling in a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know what your feel is on that story or what you see going on there, if you're in sync.
Yeah, part of me has tried to change people and doesn't work that way. The the change
Surprise.
needs the change needs to come from within.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped trying to entirely understand why people do bad things. I more give them as much patience and grace as possible and try to serve as an example of the opposite of what they believe. I'm going to butcher this story because I don't know it that well, but there's a guy that, African American man that infiltrated the KKK and wrote a whole book about it, basically through empathy and listening and compassion and hearing people out, hearing their story. What's the why behind it? Offering new narratives, new suggestions as, oh, yeah, that makes total sense why A led you to B. What if A could lead you to C? And basically infiltrated and changed hundreds of lives of people that were in the KKK simply just by changing their perspective. So that's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One simple example, because I love her, I want to bring her up. Sarah Edmondson was not the member of a group that was notably demonstrative. Like no one knew that this was bad behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
She was in a self-help group called Nexium, and they would put together what they called executive success programs. And a
Uh-huh.
lot of it was taking like neuro linguistic programming and hypnosis and limiting beliefs and
Uh-huh.
teaching you how to squash it and et cetera, so you can be more successful. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the people that signed up for these programs actually gained a good amount of benefit,
Uh-huh.
but the fearless, charismatic leader had this whole new agenda going on behind the scenes that the
Okay.
closer and closer you got to these programs, the moment you became an employer, a volunteer, a big recruiter, you'd see that there is weird stuff going on. And he was basically like creating a sex cult of these vulnerable women behind the scenes and using
Okay.
this professional success, executive success programs to make money and do all this, but really it was for manipulative, terrible reasons. And it got to the
Mm.
point where they started physically, like an animal, branding the women,
Oh my God.
branding the women with his initials.
Wow.
Now, people hear, oh, people got branded, and they miss the 10 years that indoctrinated and manipulated people into this cult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Sarah and her husband, Nippy, who met in this cult, actually got out. They were whistleblowers that exposed the cult. She was on the cover of the New York Times in the United States, big
Uh-huh.
news articles everywhere. And eventually, after decades of operating and hurting people behind the scenes, Keith Raniere got 112 years in prison. So he's there until death, and then probably,
Okay.
hopefully, 2 deaths for him. But
Mm-hmm.
long story simplified. Now she has a podcast with her husband, Nippy, a little
Uh-huh.
bit culty, where by
Okay.
sharing their story,
Mm-hmm.
people can see the red flags.
Yeah.
It doesn't always look like this KKK or this drink the Kool-Aid cult. It can be
Mm-hmm.
normal, and then you don't know what the red flags are. And
Mm-hmm.
by bringing people that escaped groups like the KKK, we
Yeah.
can better understand the psychology behind it. It's fascinating. It's all true. And again, I'm not out to change anybody, but if I can better understand the psychology of why they
Mm-hmm.
go from A to B, I can have more empathy and compassion in my conversation. And it's really just kind of spicy and fun to hear
Oh
about
yeah.
some of the things that people, but
Oh yeah.
my one last point is the alcoholism, the cult, the abuse is exactly what actually gives you merit. It's exactly why those
Mm-hmm.
people are the ones that should be talking about these kind of things. So
Yeah.
our struggle and our issue and our failure actually can be our gift because we can help other people avoid that same struggle.
Mm, I feel you. Yeah, that's an amazing subject because the whole story about manipulation. I
Yeah.
read these books from Robert Greene,
Hmm.
The Law of Human Nature, and
48 Laws of Power is his biggest
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. And there's the daily laws as well. I used to have that on my bedstand, and every day I opened up the book and read a part, and it's amazing what insights you start to get. Because of course, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been like 4 years now, and you start to understand how marketing, partially your business as well, starts working. And the same thing with coaching or mentoring. You're actually sometimes you're positively manipulating somebody to go somewhere that would improve them.
Correct.
That's mostly what we do. And what I also learned from those books is like one of the basic rules that I found amazing. It's kind of funny because I never did it, was do not outstand your leaders. Do not become more shining than your direct leader. And I never thought of that. I always outshone my leaders. So
Sure.
I could always forget my promotions because they was like, no, we're not gonna tell anybody that he did that and that. I did it. So they kind of kept me small because I wanted to outshine them. But that's one lesson I learned a little bit too late. But yeah, I find that we're talking about perspective and then go from to manipulation and all the stories that can come out of that, which can be very interesting. I found it amazing to go into conversations with people that have such extreme looks on life and learn from them how I do not want to be.
Sure.
It's I'm gonna pick up a little political thing here from my point of view. I have no idea what's going on in the U.S. I do not look at the news. I do not listen to the news. To give you an example, COVID came in. I did not know about it. So I started my business the 8th of February 2020. COVID came in 13th of March, lockdown. My agenda was full and it was empty, and I did not know why it was empty. My family was astonished that I didn't know that this thing was going on. So just to point out that I do not know details of what's going on in the US. So the whole
Hmm.
Trump story, the guy with the white hair, that's who I call him. Um, the way he talks, the way he publicizes, the way he throws things out there, which are sometimes completely illogical. They're not related to anything. People ask him questions, and he just blurts out something completely different. And and there's a lot of people who hang on his lips, and I'm astonished on the point of view they live in. How how do you come to that point that you hang on somebody's lips who's officially proven liar, but does I think he does good things as well. It's not that, but it's just and I don't want to go deeper into Trump and all that, but just want to mention this because
Hmm.
it's a very good example for me personally on how people can shift and hang on somebody's lips. We've had the same thing here. Somebody was also very outspoken and very clear and so on, and I always find it amazing to see what they're doing, how far they go. They don't only hang on their lips, they go into physical positions further in their life where they start to maybe blockade stuff or intervene in public services and so on. And it's like reminds me of somebody with a little mustache in the 1940s, well, a bit earlier,
Yeah.
that also has this golden tongue to swivel a whole population in a certain direction. And I don't want to look at the negative part. I want to look at the positive part, the golden tongue itself. And I would find it amazing if we would have somebody who has that golden tongue, but to inspire people to become more humanity, more connected with each other,
Yeah.
more the complete other side of what we've seen. Of course, we only see the negative side because that's the thing that comes into the news and blurts out all over the place. There might be people with the golden tongue doing their business already. I think Sadhguru, for instance, is one of those guys that I enjoy
Mm,
very much because he's got these nice little puns all over the place. But what I was going to is what I found in what you've told me here and what I've heard in your own podcast. You're really hitting the direction of the golden tongue in my eyes, in my experience, because what you bring, and it's really from an honest place, is so beautiful and so fulfilling that I really hope that you can, boost that story even more than where you are right now.
yeah.
It's a long road to get where I wanted to be, but that's what I wanted to bring you to.
Well, thank
Um,
you. And it's interesting to think about because if you look at Hitler, if you look at a Trump, if you look at an Andrew Tate,
mhm,
these are very persuasive personalities. They're
indeed.
able to build tribes of people that are soldiers and cheerleaders for every word they say.
Mhm,
You bring up a good point. What are they doing correctly?
mhm,
And
mhm.
how can we utilize similar strategies for good?
Indeed.
Because they're
Indeed.
doing good. They're doing good
Yeah.
stuff. Like
Mm,
Donald Trump is a good salesperson. He's good at building a brand.
absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
That's factual.
Mhm,
A lot of people would argue that Barack Obama was a great representation of what they wanted America in the future to look like. A lot of people would also argue that he didn't fulfill a lot of the promises he made.
mhm, mhm.
Also, a lot of people would argue that they don't like him because of the color of his skin.
Yeah, indeed.
But I would at least argue that I don't think Barack was this malicious bad person.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So how can we find a Barack personality with the I joke all the time, like if Dwayne the Rock Johnson or even Arnold Schwarzenegger, if someone like that could run, if Oprah ran
Oh,
for
that would be
president,
yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah.
what's
Mhm,
difficult, and I know less about politics than probably even you do. I just am from America, so I hear a couple things. If
mhm,
if Oprah won, she would
mhm,
win, and what a good place like the world would be in. The difficulty is an Oprah doesn't want to run.
mhm.
So the second question comes into play is what kind of narcissistic, egotistical person do you have to be to even want to be president? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, you got a point there. Yeah.
Like, why that job?
Yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that you can take on that's a lot more, yeah, fulfilling, I think, and
Well,
maybe
I
impactful.
love
Yeah.
the concept of that job in theory, but if you look at the history and the data, like we aren't
Mm,
effective anyways. Like you're almost just a spokesperson. You don't even get shit done half the time.
that's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
that's about all I know about politics. Part of
Well,
me
that
was like, if we had a leader for 50-year terms, and I'm like, oh wait, I don't want that either. That's a dictatorship.
we'll change from a democracy to a royalty again.
It's good
We
for the
still have a
people on the
royalty
top.
here in Belgium, by the way. So
Do you?
it's
What
something
what
that really does.
you can
Yeah.
go into this if you want, or we can change topics, but like what does the economic political system look like? Is it anything like America?
Oh, so of what I know, and I used to have all these lessons in high school and stuff like that. So basically, what the most known thing of our country is, we have three different languages. The nation languages: German, French, and Dutch. I'm from the Dutch side, Flemish Dutch side. And our country is actually split up in three language areas with three different governments and with a countrywide government. So I always say we have more politicians than toilet ladies. And we also have a royal family, which
Yes.
is it's yeah. I don't know, the small history lesson might be applicable, but Belgium was created as a neutral zone between the Dutch, the German, the French, and the English. It's just this place where we've been conquered by everybody all over the place, and that's usually very, very clear.
We'll just share Belgium, guys.
Yeah, everybody wants a little bit of it. Let's get us for 100 years there, and then maybe 50 years there. So it's just playground for the big nations. But our royal family got because our first king, did not want to have the country. He didn't want to, but they kind of forced him into it. And then we had a very dark period in our country was Zaire, Congo, where we did not so many nice things. But our country has produced a lot of interesting things because the European Union is in our capital, Brussels. Adolf Sax comes from Belgium, which is music-wise very important. So there's a lot of things that come out of our country that are amazing. And on the other hand, it's a super complex environment. If you look at, if I drive for maybe 30 minutes, I'm in a different part of a country which talks a different language, which
Wow.
has a different culture.
Wow.
And it's like 30 minutes. I had a manager. I used to work for Verizon, and she came from Texas, and her stepmom lives in Holland. And she said, Nick, I want to come over and I want to visit Brussels. I said, okay, fine. I will guide you and show you Brussels. And they were coming from Holland, and in an hour time they were in Brussels. And so we walked around Brussels, and she says, how far is it to Paris? I said, well, maybe an hour, 2 hours. Oh, that's like right next door to us. If you drive through Holland, you go through Belgium, France, in like 3 hours you pass 3 countries.
Wow.
So the perspective of size is a completely different story. And she was from Texas. You can imagine that she really thought extra small.
Yeah.
But yeah, our country is kind of where you guys have all the states. We
Yeah.
have our provinces, so it's a
Yeah.
lot more European, as in mainstream and cliche, I would say. Um, but what I found kind of frustrating is that we have so much political stories in our country,
Yeah.
where you see other countries which are so much bigger, and they have like this little parliament or chambers or whatever with a couple of hundred people, where we have the same amount for a small country that doesn't even last 3 hours when you're driving through it. It's mind-boggling. And I'm also a universalist, so I do not see countries, I do not see provinces, I see planet Earth. I'm a human
Yeah.
being, I'm on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And when I go into conversation with people here locally about politics or regions or stuff like that, I'm like, I don't see the difference. We're all two-legged, two-armed, eyes, ears, color, whatever. If I stay out in the sun too long, I'll be brown as well. I don't see the difference.
Yeah.
And the conflict that exists in our country is amazing on such a small scale. It's almost funny. Well, to me anyway. But I don't think it's for the politicians that way. So yeah.
So something big happens and they have to provide a message to everyone in the country. What language is it in?
It's 3 different languages.
If is there no pick and choose? Is there like one that takes
No.
prevalence over the other two?
Well, looking history-wise,
Yeah.
French was the major language because all the doctors and professors, they talked French.
Yeah.
They were the ones with the cravat and so on. But then history kind of changed that power because the coal mines were the money makers, and they were in the French part of our country. And the iron steel industry was there as well. And then at some point, the coal mines dried out, and all the industry and so on went to our region. So we became the rich one. And still, the French language still has a kind of a priority
Yeah.
for most of the people that are there. But all 3 languages are at the same height of usage or
Yeah.
whatever, because all our documents and so on, they're in 3 languages. the sign of it's actually an obligation for an employer to understand that the person in front of them speaks one of the three languages, so they give them the right document. Because if I would sign, for instance, a German document, it would not be valid because I do not understand what's in there. It's like a whole law thing and so on. So during COVID, it
Yeah.
was pretty funny to watch the news because you saw like three different rails. One, the guy was talking in French, you had subtitles in Dutch, and then the guy next to it was translating it in sign language, and then at night, right next to that, you had it in German. It was like, where do I look? Who do I listen to?
What?
Yeah. And then the extreme fun thing is, at some point, they were making a statement
Yeah.
orally. The statement was different in the subtitles. So
Right.
all the people who read the subtitles interpreted it wrong. So they thought the lockdown was done while
Mm.
they were actually saying that it lasted longer. They had to
What's
correct all of that stuff. I think the guy that was doing the translation there didn't really keep his job very long.
probably not.
No, indeed.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
complexity of a small country.
what are your thoughts on the fact that most Americans can't even speak their own language properly, let alone 2, 3, 4 more?
I have to say I've met a lot of Americans. You know, I worked in IT for 15 years, and of those 15 years, I think about 6 or 7 years was with Americans and with English people, so native English, England,
Yeah.
British. Um, and when I talk to them, when you listen to somebody from Britain, their accent is completely different as an American, because a lot of the British guys called me the American because my English is a lot more American than British. And then when it came down to different languages, the people that I met, they also had at least one other language that they spoke. Could have been French or Spanish or whatever. And I find it strange that it is apparently something of a cliche where even Americans themselves say we're too dumb to learn another language.
Yeah.
And I think about 70% of the Americans that I have met knew another language, because you guys learn, I think well, Spanish is something that you also get in high school, or French, you can also take that as an option. So I don't really see that issue there. What I found sometimes is that a lot of Americans don't know their geography. So they think that
Mhm.
Belgium is the capital of Brussels, while it's the other way around, for instance, stuff like that, which is not major, but that's something that I've met and heard. Of course, when they come over, they get the whole shebang, the whole explaining Europe and how it works. That's just what I did, like 5 minutes ago.
You have to understand that Americans haven't understood geography. There's not a day that we understood geography. That's how America was born. Christopher Columbus just sailed the ocean blue, said, "Oh, but this seems good enough," and that's America. Wrong
Okay.
spot, wrong spot. Well, I don't even know the whole story. I butcher it, but
Mhm.
Columbus wasn't trying to find America.
No, he was not. He was going
Complete
for India.
accident, and he's like, "Oh, what an opportunity we have
Mhm.
here."
Indeed. Indeed.
Virtual
Oh,
thumbs up.
cool. Where does that come from?
People are listening to the audio, so I have my hand up in a fist, and my camera is putting a thumbs up on the screen. I think it thinks I'm putting a thumbs up, but then I put the thumb up and it didn't work.
Maybe
So
I
the
tried.
angry fist creates a thumbs up, but the actual thumbs up won't.
Cool. Strange
Anyways,
thing. Technology does not listen when it needs to listen. It only listens when it doesn't need to listen.
it makes no sense to someone who's just listening to the audio. Like, what the heck are these guys talking about? I don't even know.
Well, in any case, we're having a very interesting conversation about so many different topics. I think we could talk for hours if we could put our mind to it. But at some point, we're going to have to, put our minds at ease and say thank you very much for being here.
Is this that point?
I don't think so. Let's continue. I got
You
another
said
one.
at some point, then you said, "Thanks for being here." I'm like, "Oh, is that the end?"
No, no, let's continue. I find it fun. No, let's continue. If you want to, we can continue. Now there's listeners listening at us like, what's happening in this podcast? Are they saying goodbye or aren't they saying goodbye? This is intriguing, isn't it? I love this.
I'm
I
just
want to
over
ask you one
here.
more
I'm practicing silence.
question. Somebody taught you that. I really want to ask you one more question to be very serious on this one. Um,
Pass.
so you're okay.
I'm kidding. What
I
question?
love this conversation, man. This is fun. This is fun. I want to ask you something that is much more related to your current success, because you told us your story a little bit earlier, and you kind of touched base on it at some point. But what were, for yourself, the biggest hurdles that you had to overcome to come at this point where you are right now?
Oof. In business, in life, it's difficult because I refuse to play a victim role, but
Mm-hmm.
things in my life were devastating. My father had a really bad drinking problem. Um, I got really this is kind of where I started figuring out how to read people, because like we would watch football together, for example. He was a
Mm-hmm.
big American football, so not the real football, but American football.
Yeah.
Um, and his favorite team was the Denver Broncos. So we watched the game, and like during commercial breaks, he'd like go downstairs or go to the office, this or that, and like his eyes would get progressively redder, and he would have to use the bathroom progressively more. And if
Mm-hmm.
things went wrong, he'd sometimes get kind of angry. Then he'd be verbally abusive to my mom, and
Mm-hmm.
simultaneously, my mom had a neurological disorder, multiple sclerosis.
Okay.
So from at a very young age in my life, I kind of watched her health and her just ability to process quickly diminish more and more over time. And so I was this shy, short kid that wanted to be a basketball player, who, you don't realize this, no one knows, and no one really asks at that age, but, like, we had a decent fence, and we lived in an okay neighborhood, and we were lower middle class, but I felt very disconnected most of my childhood, and I think
Uh-huh.
a big part of why I started Rochester Business Connections, that's now called Real Business Connections, is because I wanted to figure it out. One, I wanted more business connections. Two, I
Mm-hmm.
felt really displaced and disconnected a lot of my life. And like I got good at reading rooms accidentally,
Oh,
but
nice.
I always felt like the outsider looking in.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked biggest hurdles, it was kind of really like not being defined by some of those difficulties. Not being defined that I followed in my father's footsteps and I became a pretty heavy drinker and I abused drugs and I landed in jail a couple of times for throwing parties, and there was like underage people at the party and I did all the stupid stuff. But we talked about this earlier. When I see someone who's struggling, when I see someone who's not living big, I lived small. When I
Mm-hmm.
see someone who's not living big, but they're brilliant, or they're struggling, but it's not permanent,
Mm-hmm.
I do my best to get them out of it because I've been there as well.
Yeah.
And it's not just one single hurdle. It's almost like when I rebranded myself from music Ben, who is a party animal, to business Ben that's into personal growth and business development. That was
Mm-hmm.
a big identity shift.
Yeah.
And the real hurdle is creating an identity shift, but not forgetting where it came from as well.
Mm-hmm.
And still to this day, I have alcoholic tendencies where I'll be like irritable or rude to people. Or still to this day, um, I mean, it pains me. Like my mom passed away just over a year ago, and it's like we all go through these things. But the
Mhm,
question I ask myself is, can I change any of that?
mhm.
Or can that be, I'm now a messenger for all the things I've been through? Because I can't change the past.
Yeah,
So it's a
yeah.
lifelong hurdle, and it becomes like something that you get to be like a lifelong advocate for a better world because I haven't seen the kind of darkness some people have, but I've
Mhm.
seen enough that I don't want to go back that way anymore, my
I
friend.
can believe that,
I
yeah.
don't want to go deeper because people
Mhm,
have been deeper than I have. And I kind of sometimes self-deprecate, and I don't think my story is that interesting because a lot of people have a similar story, but that's
mhm,
exactly why I need to hold the torch because I'm not speaking to the people that X, Y, and Z. I'm speaking to the people that are going through similar things as
mhm,
I personally went through.
mhm, mhm. So does that kinda hit the point where you also believe that you always meet the people that you need to meet because they are a reflection of what you're going through?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think about it that much.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think about things a lot, and then other times I don't think at all. I don't think,
Mm,
wow, where will this conversation take us? I
mhm.
just have the conversation, and then like 3 year down the road, I'm like, wow.
Oh, that happened.
But
Indeed, yeah.
I'm trying to act more out of vision than anything prior. I used to be very methodical.
Mhm.
Methods work. For example, send 20 text messages a day and you'll have better relationships.
Indeed, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But being present and just kind of like, who knows what's going to happen? I could get hit by, this isn't going to happen, but I could get hit by a car on my ride home, like, and this
Mhm,
could have been my
mhm.
final conversation. And if I didn't share something that I should have shared, that information would be lost forever. So I'm just trying to share everything.
That's a very nice one. Yeah, that's a very nice point of view.
A little too morbid, a little too
No,
dark.
no, no, not to me. I don't know about listeners, but not to me. It's a kind of yeah. What I was thinking is, um, doesn't it give you a certain amount of load on your shoulders that you need to share everything very quickly? That's the only question that kind of comes up in my mind.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting perspective. What's I joked earlier that the best way to get rich is quick because objectively, I mean, that's more efficient.
Mhm, mhm,
But trying to act too fast might not get the message across. So you feel
yeah,
like you need to do quick, but it's actually the slow and steady and the methodical that gets you
mhm,
to where you need to be. I'm a firm believer that if you communicate and the party listening doesn't hear what you said or doesn't understand it, you
mhm,
might as well just be talking to a wall because you're not communicating effectively. So
mhm,
it depends on circumstances, setting, person, but it's trying to be a chameleon
mhm.
and do what's right for the given moment.
Yeah.
But if you try too hard to do things quickly, you'll end up actually missing the nuances required to actually do it well.
Yeah, I can follow you in that story there. I find it the same when I'm in coachings. You have to sometimes you have to be really, really focused, but sometimes you can be over focused, listening and body language and all of that thing that you're not reacting anymore to what really is important at that moment. And it's not easy. It's something that you can only learn by doing, I think. Where the conversation goes, um, that's an unknown. How your influences are on that conversation, it's an unknown. So if you want to really spread the word quickly, it's an unknown. You're not going to. You're not going to. Wow, this is going some places. This is cool. This is cool. Thank you very much for your insights. It's just amazing how you go with the flow and pick in on these things.
Let's
So
talk again
Ben,
in 6 months, and I'll probably disagree with myself because I wanna add a disclaimer. We're just speaking from our experience and our understanding so far. This is a journey. If I
yeah.
discover that everything I said is wrong, I'll
Hmm.
just send you a message. This is the actual way. But I don't think there is an actual way. Like part of the beauty is sometimes we're just a feather in the wind, seeing where the world takes us, and we got to embrace that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff that I know now that I would never have thought that was a reality or could be true. Um, it's kind of a dream of mine to be able to talk myself like when I was 10 years old or something and tell them where I am right now. Not to boast or anything, but just to make it clear, like it's gonna be okay. You're gonna do amazing things. You're gonna
Yeah.
have hardship. You're gonna have difficult times, but you're gonna have amazing things happen to you and creating. And I think that's the whole point. Because somebody a couple of weeks back asked me the question, so what's the point of life? I'm really going into a really heavy question here, but if you want to go want to go there, let me know. But um, I've learned that the only thing that is really what is the point of life or what's the purpose or whatever is to live it, because there's only one moment that is real, and that's the now, and it's the only thing that you can do is live the now. And it's not always applicable because you have ups and downs. You're tired, you're not here because I don't know, last night was a heavy evening or late night or whatever, and you're not going to live in the moment. But I have also learned that living in the moment is about gratitude.
Hmm.
Just saying thank you to yourself or to somebody who's close to you or the people around you. And that's what I usually try to do to get back into the moment. It's like, thank you, I'm right here. Okay, I'm here. Thank you. And then you end up back into that moment and you're in sync again with the conversation or whomever's there. So I don't know if you see anything there that's completely different than in the way of you see the world. But I find it amazing to live in the moment and setting no expectations at some point.
I
But
agree.
it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's just not putting out expectations for yourself or others.
Well, people are, we're
Hmm.
obsessed with the end goal. It goes back to what my buddy Brian said. I said it earlier that there isn't an end destination. It's only a constant evolution of self. And if you're constantly evolving, you are winning. It's that
Hmm.
simple. If
Hmm.
you're evolving, if you're not present in the moment and you recognize that, that's a win. That's an evolution that you found that you were out of the present. Now imagine next time you find yourself falling out of the present, you've actually built a muscle where you can actually swing yourself back and start paying better attention. And before you know it, you're blissed out. That's another thing. And we can go down some crazy rabbit hole, but like
Yeah, it's true.
I think there a certain element of striving, a certain element of ego and achievement is
Hmm.
actually pretty beneficial for most people because I joke all the time, and I don't know if anyone's properly could even answer this, but if you're totally blissed out in the moment, would you just
Hmm.
sit there in your own shit and not care? Like that doesn't sound fulfilling either. So it's like, how can I find the balance between connection to source or the moment or whatever the heck's going on in this world and an ego that helps me make the world a better place because you can't
Hmm.
be I don't have an answer for it, but that's why it
Hmm.
goes back to the constant evolution. The
Hmm.
answers change, the mindset evolves, but really I think what's more important is wisdom and experience because even if you say something that's wrong, if it's
Hmm.
coming from a wise place, that's okay because we can course correct and we can find the right later on. And then you end up finding out that there was no right or wrong in the first place. And that's when it's a never ending cycle. Like, what is right or wrong? Isn't that based on personal perception? So
Yeah.
any, I
No,
think
it's
I
in
am.
the
But
end, it's amazing to talk about these things. Um, what do you, if you could choose one listener to the podcast, and it would be the last person that you ever talk to, what would you love to hear from them?
to hear from them
Yeah.
or say to them.
Well, it could go either way. It's up to you.
They're very different questions. What I'd love to, you
Absolutely.
know what? It's actually kind of the same answer. What I'd love to hear from them is I humbly am going to share everything I know, everything I learn. I will share the scars, but only once I have a strong enough understanding of them that I can wrap up a bow and, share the positivity and the insight. But I'm going to constantly learn. I'm going to constantly be curious. I'm going to constantly be introspective. And then
Hmm.
I'm going to take those knowings, those wisdoms, those insights, and I'm going to share all of it because I've thought about this before. And if I pass away, a lot of that, my legacy might be forgotten. But
Hmm.
if I teach people what I know and if I share and if I make ripples, the
Hmm.
world will be a better place. And I'm confident in that. Even if they
Hmm.
forget my name, they won't forget these thoughts. So it'd
Indeed.
be a travesty if I learned something and I didn't share it. So I'm going to share everything. And you never know who needs it. That's
Yeah.
why I'm going to continue to share and continue to share and continue to share.
That's
That's
amazing.
decent advice, but I'd love to hear someone say that as well because speaking
Hmm.
that into existence kind of holds you accountable as well.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. It's amazing. There's some good, really good stuff that we discussed today.
Hope
I'm
so.
so happy that you could be able to, schedule some time in your busy schedule for the day and have our conversation. I knew that this was going to be amazing, but it kind of topped off, even with the joking around and the strange situations and everything. It makes it so much more natural
Yeah.
because I one of the things that I've learned from doing a lot of podcasts, because I think this is my third series that I make.
Hmm.
I used to make them in Dutch first. Is that even though I can ask questions, pre-scripted questions, because the listeners might not know, but I actually send a couple of questions just to indicate what we're going to talk about. And I think we maybe topped off with two or three of them in our conversation today. But
Perfect.
the less questions I use from that list, the more interesting the conversation becomes. And I think I want to really be very, very clear on this, Ben. I'm really grateful for our conversation, and I learned a lot of, yeah, a couple of really, really profound things from you today, and I hope our listeners did as well. So in the end, where can people find you? How can they follow your podcast? Go right ahead. Tell them what they need to do to follow you to be more inspired.
Well, I want to make this super simple. So the way we met was I commented on one of your posts.
Hmm.
So show some love to the creator. I'm grateful because not the creator God, like the creator like Nico right here, because I wouldn't be on this platform without him. You can show some love to God too, but show some love to Nico by hitting subscribe if you haven't yet. Hitting 5 stars. It'll take you, you should have already had it done by now. Just hit 5 stars. Boom, that's done. If you want bonus points, you leave a comment. If you want
Hmm.
extra bonus points, you send a DM. I'm easy to find. And if I screw this up, find me and correct me. All you got to type in is real business connections. Type in the words real business connections wherever you found this, and Google works. So you can Google it. But
Hmm.
show some love to my boy first, and then real business connections. You'll find me. It's that easy.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
It was so much fun. We're gonna do this in 6 months again.
Let's do it. Oh my God, I'll probably disagree with myself, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Like, who was that guy? Oh my God.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks again, Ben, for your time. And I'll hear everybody next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Everlasting Podcast. Don't forget to follow or subscribe or share this podcast episode with your friends. If it's inspiring to one person, the impact is clear. You want to know more about the everlasting fulfillment? Contact me on LinkedIn or go to my website www.nicovandevenene.com. That is www.nicovandevenne.com. Feel free to pick up your own ebook on the Beyond Success strategy. I hope to see you again next time during our next episode. Have a Beyond Success day.